There was once a merry tailor by the name of Mr. Joseph Nitechka, who lived in the town of Tyderida. He was a very thin man, and had a small beard of 136 hairs. Now, all tailors are thin, but Mr. Joseph Nitechka was the thinnest of all, because he could pass through the eye of his own needle. He could eat nothing but noodles, for they were the only thing that could go down his throat. But for all this, Mr. Nitechka was a happy man, and quite handsome, too, especially on holidays when he braided his beard. Now, Mr. Nitechka would have lived in Tyderida for a long time, had it not been for a gypsy. She was in town when she cut her foot. In her trouble, she went to Mr. Nitechka, who mended it so carefully and so neatly that not a scar could be seen. She was grateful, and in return read Mr. Nitechka's poem. "If you go west," she said, "leave this town on a Sunday, you will come to a place where you will become king." Mr. Nitechka laughed at this. Become king? But that night he had a dream in which he was indeed king, and from prosperity had grown as rotund as a barrel. "Get up, Mr. Nitechka," he said to himself. "Get up and go west." He made a bundle of 100 needles, a thimble, a spool of thread with 1,000 miles of thread on it, an iron, and a pair of long shears. Then he tried to find out which way was west. He asked one, and then he asked another, but no one seemed to know where west was. Finally he asked an old man, 106 years old, where the west was. And the old man thought a while, and then he said, "West must be where the sun sets." This seemed so wise to Mr. Nitechka that he set out in that direction. He hadn't gone long when a gust of wind blew him. It was not a very strong gust of wind, but Mr. Nitechka was so thin that it picked him right up off the ground and carried him along. He laughed heartily at being given such a ride, but soon the wind tossed him down on the ground, and Mr. Nitechka was so bewildered that he did not realize where he was. "What's this?" he heard a voice, and then looking around he saw he was in the middle of a wheat field, and that the wind had blown him straight into the arms of a scarecrow. It was a very elegant scarecrow, with a broken stovepipe hat, a blue coat, and trousers that were hardly torn at all. He had 2 sticks for hands and 2 sticks for feet. Well, Mr. Nitechka bowed very low. "Greetings, stranger," he said. "Greetings, and my humble apologize. I did not mean to step on your foot." "Oh, I am charmed to meet such a gracious gentleman," said the scarecrow. "I am Count Scarecrow, and my coat of arms is 4 sticks. And who are you, and where are you going?" "I am Mr. Joseph Nitechka, tailor of Tyderida, and I am going west to become king." "Is it possible?" said the Count. "Yes," said Mr. Nitechka, "I was born to become king. And if you like, you may come along with me. It will be merrier." "Oh, I would like to do that indeed," said the scarecrow, "for I am uncommonly courageous, and would much rather fight tigers and lions than keep the sparrows away from the wheat. But the tigers and lions seldom come this time of year to eat the wheat." Then the Count Scarecrow went on, "But if I go with you, Mr. Nitechka, could you mend my clothes a bit? Because I might like to marry someone on the way, and I should look neat and handsome." "I would be delighted," said Mr. Nitechka, and he set to work, and in an hour's time the Scarecrow had a beautiful suit and a hat that looked almost new. The two set out. The sparrows laughed a little at them, but there went the Scarecrow walking with great dignity beside Mr. Nitechka. The two became great friends, and whenever there was trouble from dogs, the Scarecrow, who was courageous because of his profession, tore out one of his feet and threw it at the dogs, and then he tied it back to his body again. At night they slept in open fields, and Mr. Nitechka tied himself with a piece of string to the Scarecrow so that the wind should not blow him away again. One night he saw through the trees a light. "Well, let us go there," he said to Count Scarecrow. "Perhaps they will take us in." "Oh, by all means," said the Count. "Let us do them the honor." And so they went toward the light. When they got there, they saw it was indeed a strange house, for it was up on 4 legs and turning around and around. "The man who lives there," said the tailor, "must be a lively one indeed, because he dances all the time." They waited until the door came around, and then they went in. Although it was the middle of summer, immense logs burned in the stove, and on top of the fire sat a nobleman, warming himself. Every once in a while he would toss a burning coal into his mouth and swallow it with great relish. Soon he noticed the 2 strangers, and he got up and went over. "Mr. Nitechka," he said, bowing. "Count Scarecrow," he bowed again. Now Nitechka and the Scarecrow were so astonished that he knew their names that they could say nothing. All they did was bow, and Nitechka, because he was very polite, hopped 3 times. "Stay here," said the nobleman, "stay here for supper, and I will call my wife and daughter and my other relatives, and in the morning you can go on your way." He clapped his hand, and immediately his wife and daughter and a great company appeared. His daughter was very beautiful, but when she laughed, it sounded as if a horse had neighed in a nearby meadow. She liked Mr. Nitechka's looks very much, and she let him know right away that she would consider him ideal as a husband. They all sat down to eat. Nitechka and Count Scarecrow on a bench, but all the others were sitting on cauldrons filled with hot coals. "Do not wonder at my family," said the Count, or the nobleman, "because my family is all very cold-blooded." Then a great cauldron of soup was served, and Nitechka was just about to put a spoonful in his mouth when the Count tugged at his elbow and said, "Do not eat the soup. It is hot pitch."